Hello, I'm Amara Jones, and today is Friday, June 19th. This is Caffeine TV, your daily news brief, here to take you through headline numbers in just 3 minutes, giving you a different take on everything from housing policy to the Real Housewives. The first number of today is 14, as in 14 hours. That's how long it took authorities to capture 21-year-old Charleston shooter Dylan Storm Roth. He was found in Shelby, North Carolina, 350 miles away from where he had caused the carnage at Emmanuel AME Church in South Carolina. Now, over the past 24 hours, additional details have emerged about both him and the massacre. Not only did he, as we spoke about yesterday, pray with the congregants that he eventually ended up shooting for an hour, but he sat right next to the pastor of the church and read scripture with him. And when he got up to begin his killing spree, one of his eventual victims tried to talk him down and tell him that he didn't have to do it. And he said, quote, "You are raping our women, you are taking over our country, and I have to do this," close quote. Now, one of the esoteric questions that's come up is whether or not this was a terrorist incident. Well, he told one of his former roommates that he wanted to take an action that would cause, quote, "a civil war," close quote. And there's a Facebook picture of him wearing the South African and Rhodesian flags from their periods of colonialism and apartheid. They were both white minority governments in Africa, which lorded over black majorities. So clearly politics was on his mind when he entered in the church. And since the definition of terrorism is a violent act in service to political aims, well, then he's a terrorist. But one of the questions in all of this is why people don't want to acknowledge that. And maybe it's because, as the Southern Poverty Law Center says, these incidents have been occurring once every 5 weeks over the past 5 years. And maybe that's more than most Americans are willing to deal with. The next number today is 1865. That's the year in which the American Civil War ended, but on the grounds of the South Carolina state capitol. You know, South Carolina was the first state to secede back in 1861. There's a monument to Confederate war dead with a Confederate flag flying high over it. Now, yesterday, in the wake of the Emmanuel AME Church massacre, the flags of both the United States and the formal flag of South Carolina at the state capitol were both lowered to half-mast, but the Confederate flag still flies unadjusted. And the question is why? Now, according to South Carolina state authorities, only the state legislature has the ability to change the height of the Confederate state flag. And so since both the House and Senate are out of session, the flag has to remain where it is. But what's interesting is that neither the governor of the state, nor the Speaker of the House, nor the leader of the Senate have publicly called for that flag to be lowered. Now, what's also interesting is that the Confederate flag, after the Civil War, basically disappeared from sight and memory. But during the Civil Rights Movement, it began to appear on the state flags of states all across the South. So the flag has more to do with the Civil Rights Movement than it does to do with the Civil War. And given the fact that it was embraced by Charleston terrorist Dylan Storm Roth, he had one on the front of his car, that flag needs to come down. The last number today is 4, as in 4 months. That's how long ago NBC suspended Brian Williams from the nightly news for, well, making up the news. And yesterday, the news network announced his fate. Rather than firing him outright, he'll be transferred over to cable network MSNBC, where he'll report on breaking news and create special news reports. Now, what's interesting is why he wasn't fired. He's lost credibility with audiences for, of course, lying, but perhaps the idea is that his brand name can help lift the sagging ratings of MSNBC. And perhaps in a nutshell, that's what's wrong with news today. Rather than it being about a focus on truth, it's all about the Benjamins.